Welcome back, everybody. We're gonna move on to the lock on. That's been the one I've had the most questions on. To start with, you're gonna be in your event tick. All camera functions are the only place I use my tick. I try not to use it. I like it being an inexpensive game. Just about every computer should be able to run this, hopefully. So I try to stay away from event tick, as that's kind of heavy. I set my delta seconds in a variable, so I can just use this elsewhere. Just plug that in rather than drag off 1 million of these everywhere. But you may not need to. From there, these are all my camera functions. I gotta go through this probably again. I set this up, 8, 9 months ago, and then never screwed with it again because it's the least fun for me, vector math, and it's also probably my least strong area, probably the weakest there. So if somebody else sees this and they can think of a much smarter, easier way of doing things, I'm sure they're like laughing at me. But I got mine done, and that's all that really matters to me. But basically, the tick goes straight through there, unlock on, and that's where we're going to be in here. From there, I got an input action lock on for my button, and I also just set up a event so I can call it whenever I want. You can do it however you need to. I always have an ignore set up on most things, just in case I want to do that. But from there, basically, we just need to check if we're already locked on. If we are, I just call my lock off because you push it once and it locks on. The second time, it locks off. After that, we go off to the actual function of locking on, and that's just finding the closest target. That's really all we're doing here. Get all actors of a class. I have that as my enemy. If you wish to lock onto other things, you'll just need to make an array out of multiple things here, and then we just loop for each one. I'm going to cast off to my enemy, and I simply check, are they dead? If it's true, they don't do anything. This is just where you set up all your ways that you want to eliminate certain enemies. After you do find all the enemies you want to, or they pass whatever checks you need, just find the distance to them. From there, we're just going to check it against a lock target distance. You can set this up as the max distance you want someone to lock on. I don't have enemies that exist unless I want to be able to lock onto them, essentially. So my number is just ridiculously huge. They're basically on the moon if they're this far away. But if you wanted it to be 5,000 Unreal units, you'll just put that there. And we simply just see is that number greater than this one. Obviously, it's not going to be greater than this one. But if it was, it would do absolutely nothing. But since it's not, we move on. We set that as the new distance. It's kind of the new distance to beat. So this person, say, is 2,000 Unreal units. That'll be set, and we set that person at 2,000 as the lock target. From there, we loop on to the second enemy, and that person's 2,000. Well, that's greater, so nothing happens. Then we go on to a third enemy. It's 500. Well, that's the new number to beat. That guy gets set, and the one at 500 gets set at the lock target. So on and so forth till we get the guy who's the closest to Alice. From her distance right there to the next person. I do a check after it's completed to see if I've hit anybody. If the lock target distance is equal to the default value, then I've hit no one, and I simply can move on to locking off and setting the lock target as none. And that's really mostly from a recheck, because obviously probably these both were true anyways, but just in case. But if it's false and we've actually found someone at a different distance than that, well, then we simply lock on. We just have to set this bool, and it's basically that simple. At that point, lock on should be essentially working. And the reason why is because we have everything set to tick. From there, I do set some other things, like my camera turns when you turn left or right. I don't have that on when it's locked on because it's a camera function anyways. I slow my character down. If you wish to move your camera up or down when you're locked on, that's how you do that there. I didn't really like it, so I took it out. And I tell my lock target, the enemy that he's locked on, that's how I draw that decal on the ground and have their freshnel pulsate. But you don't really need much of that. You'll just need that. And that's simply because we're always asking in that tick, and that's where this input comes from. Just goes right back into there. And that's where this pops out. That tick is just always asking anyways, are we locked on? It's just that simple, really. Once you are, then this is on. Most of the time it'll be false, and yours will probably end right here. I have a soft auto lock on. That's just to let Alice hit somebody while she's swinging. It's only on when the trace is active to help find somebody right around her to hit them. And so she obviously turns toward them. I can maybe set up. I'll show you guys how I did that later. But basically, it just goes false majority of the time, and nothing happens. And yours would probably stop right there, and nothing will happen. But if it's true, because we are locked on now, because we set that earlier, then we just check to see if they're valid, and then we look at the actor. And I have this set up as a macro, and that just pops out right here. That's that actor I plugged in. We get the actor location versus Alice's location, and we find the look at rotation. Break that. We just need the yaw, and we set Alice's rotation over and over again in the tick as well, since that's going right through. And I use that enough times I just figure I might as well make a macro, pop in an actor, and move right on. From there, we need to set the control rotation, which is kind of really the camera, even though it sounds a little confusing. At least it was to me at first. Get controller, and we set its rotation. What it is this is the thing we're changing. Here's a new rotation. Here's the rotation that I was looking for here. Get the control rotation. This is its current one. And what we're going to do is R-interp2, which is rotator interp2. The delta time, that's that thing I set up earlier. That's this one right here. If you just have your function right here, or if you do use a collapse graph like I do, you can just plug it into here. If you put an input, just pull it here. Otherwise, you can set delta time like I do. Interp speed, I have set to 5. This is just my camera's interp speed. You can just put in 5 here, or whatever number you want as well, or set up a variable like I have. And we're just going to interp from the current to the new one. The new one is going to be the mesh world rotation. We're going to take its yaw. And I have to add 90 because of how my character came in. You may not need to, but every time I did this, the camera was always straight left or straight right or something or other. And that's just how my mesh came in, my character. It was turned just a little bit. And you may not need to do that, but if you do find the camera is always facing exactly left, exactly right, or exactly behind you, you'll need to add or subtract 90 or 180, somewhere in the 90s there. Just play around with that until you get it looking forward. And you may just go yaw to yaw. In fact, you may not need to add a thing. From there, and that's because this mesh is always looking at the place we need to anyway, so it's easy. Just take that, get this world rotation, and then just make a rotation from there. We don't need a roll, but if you did, you could break this, take the roll and plug it into here, but I'm never going to roll my camera, so that's never going to be an issue. And then the pitch, I have it set to -5 currently, and I will show off exactly why I have that. And we'll also show this off here. So lock on to the closest one, go over here, that's the new closest one. And the reason why I have it set to a -5 is you can kind of always see off in the distance. It's a good place you can see out to other enemies and make sure you can see everybody here. But if you didn't pitch it, if you didn't clamp it, even though I'm still going to clamp it here, but if you don't put that as something like -5 and you let it be whatever it needs to be, if you want it to not be as tight as mine is, mine basically never really moves. You'll just take the follow camera, your world location, the lock target, and the actor location. You find the look at from there. This way, the camera's just always going to be looking at the character you need it to. Break its rotation, and then I clamp the pitch. Sorry, I just woke up. Apparently, I can't speak. I clamp the pitch as a -100 and +100, and that's way too much, and you'll see why. You're going to need to clamp it no matter what. I find that -20 maybe works, and maybe +20. I'll play around with it later when I have enemies that can fly and larger enemies and everything from there. And the reason why you'll see is just because that gets to be way too much. It gets very, very bad. So you're going to need to find some numbers that work for you for sure. And for right now, I just have it as -5 just to go ahead and move on, and I'll fix it kind of later. And this is where I've done this video 3 times now, because if I type negative on the the number pad, the video stops. So this is my third time doing it as well, so maybe that's also why. We'll move on, even though the video is slightly long, just to show the lock off. And that's just simply turning the lock on to be false. The lock target distance you'll want to reset to your default, and from there I have all those things again where I tell the person that they're locked off and everything. But you know, that's basically it. Once this is on, it'll run this, and once it's off, it'll stop because it's on tick. And then lastly, I'll do the recheck lock target. What that's going to be for me is here in my enemies. Here in my enemies, during their death script, basically I said that they are dead, and then I cast to Alice, the player character here, and I simply ask, is the lock target equal to themselves? This enemy here, is the lock target equal to that? And if that's true, then I basically cast off again and tell them to recheck lock target. And then theirs also gets set here, but like I said, that's that thing where I pulsate, and I'm gonna show the decal on the ground, but you could set it up like here, this with this one here, and then just the recheck lock target, I call that one. That's simply setting the lock target distance again, and then a sequence node to lock off, followed by I have a delay. I'm not even sure I need that. I'll probably actually even just pull this off and call lock off now that I think about it, and just take both of these out. And then simply finding the closest target again, simply relocking on. It's basically that simple. I can't think of anything else I'm missing, but if I am, just let me know. And I think that will do it. The next video will show off how to change targets with the right joystick. Yeah, that's it. Thanks, guys.